Before we begin, the genocide in Gaza has been going for 15 months now and shows no signs of stopping. Linked below are the Palestinian Children's Relief Fund and the Boycott, Divestment, Sanctions campaign. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Movie time. Gaza. I tend to go on long, needless rants about my criteria for what counts for my year-end lists until I realize I have a blog post which complements this list, which usually has my watch list, meaning I can just put the criteria on there. It took me now to realize I could just do that. Anyway, if you want to read that, work away. I also put on my honorable mentions, which there's about like 50 of them usually. Also, shout out to two films which were on general release in Ireland in 2024, but they got festival runs here in 2023, so they do not count for my criteria. Robot Dreams is a beautifully poignant film with a simple animation style that gets across complex ideas of loneliness, relationships, and time. Perfect Days has a killer soundtrack by a legendary filmmaker, one of the most life affirming stories about appreciating the simpler facets of life without the hardships it can bring. Where they would pop up on my list, if they counted, I will point out. Keep in mind, both of them are actually pretty high up.
Hey, Benny! Let's go home. Come on.
Andrea Arnold is such a spellbinding filmmaker who has an adept grasp on how cinematography works for a mood. All of her films are excellently shot and really absorb you into this ethereal beauty of the underclass without it feeling like poverty porn. Uri Kyogen had a strong year and he continues to be a fascinating presence in film, but it's newcomer Nikita Adams and Franz Rogowski that pull you into this almost fairy tale feel, but with a certain adult edge. So like a classic fairy tale. There's a magical realism element to this that may turn you off, but if you can get past that, it's a wonderful coming of age story about finding hope in a space that seems to have pushed your needs aside.
Ah, kid. You're a tonic as ever. And I thought I was landed with this man all day.
Lovely to see you.
Pat Collins is an Irish filmmaker, better known for his documentaries, though he turns around here to make a narrative feature. I feel he takes his sensibility to evoke a sense of classical rural Ireland. This movie is set in the 80s and is based on a final novel released by John McGahern. The story has a sense of forgotten country and people moving past what we held dear in a way that doesn't spell this out. It's super resonant seeing this play out in contemporary times, especially as I grew up in the 90s and I got this sense of the way of life and community. It was slowly fading out. It's not a romantic film, having said that. It's more melancholic and quiet, but it's a way that resonated with me. Even with it being so gentle and little going on, I was glued throughout. With the success of RRR, more Hindi cinema or Bollywood is being promoted more broadly over here rather than sticking to the more insular Southeast Asian communities, which is great because these movies are wild and fun. This one has a bit more of a serious tone to it, especially going to the second half, but don't let that fool you. It kicks so much ass. Very John Wick in its setup and presentation. I actually really grew attached to the main couple here, and they're really sweet, and the movie gives you a lot of time to grow attached to them. The baddies here are also full of character. They're so deliciously evil, and you really want to see them quashed. Easily some of the most intense, balls to the walls action set pieces I've seen in a film, and the escalation is something else. Superbly fun and brutal, with a pathos that really makes it something a bit more.
მეთან ცოტა თურქულიც ვიცი რა. მენი მადი მაჩი ნასს ფილმიორუმ ინგლისურიც ვიცი რა, ის YouTube-ის ყურებით მისწავლი. თქვენ მაგივრად მე დაველაპარაკები რა ამ ხალხს. Hello, how are you? How much?
Really love the atmosphere and the sensitive depictions of trans women in Istanbul that this film provides. It's not a sunny one and it revolves around sex work, but it's honest in a way that doesn't feel exploitative. This would be enough to impress me, but honestly, the story we get here is great in its own right. Mizia Arabuli and Lucas Kankava are such a great duo that truly make this journey involving and entertaining. Yet the film is unafraid to keep evolving as we get a trio made out of this duo with a lawyer who ends up helping them, played by trans actress Denise Dumanli, in one of the best performances I have seen all year. Just a fascinating watch about forgiveness, more so for yourself than the world around you that rejects you, and it's endlessly empathetic. Really the movie that Amelia Perez should have been.
It was the same time in Amsterdam as in Berlin. The weather report disappeared from the newspapers. It was now a military secret.
This documentary by Steve McQueen examines a series of testimonials that were documented by his wife, who's 3 Minutes of Lengthening director Bianca Stigler. It's about the people, mostly Jews, who were persecuted by the Nazis in occupied Amsterdam. This is accompanied by what is essentially B-roll footage of modern-day Amsterdam. It's 4 hours and 10 minutes long, roughly. The version I watched was actually cut down by about 20 minutes, so it was usually 4.5 hours. There is apparently 36 hours of footage. I could have watched it all. It's hard to explain the kind of effect watching this has on you as you sit there. You just sit there in this disquieting atmosphere as the narrator reads out matter of factly the social, political, and day to day struggles the Nazis put Jewish people through, and how that history ripples through time. It even goes to locations that are being described in the testimonials. It's powerful filmmaking that stays with you. And I say this as someone who's never been that on board with McQueen, but this one really clicked with me.
なくしちゃったの。これどうしたん？
I had to let this one sit in me for a while, but once it sunk in, God, I loved it. Such a wonderfully, powerfully, tragically human mystery film. It's told in 3 segments and examines a crisis involving a teacher and one of his students. This doesn't go in the way that you would assume from that description, but it leads to something very quietly tragic. Hirokazu Kurita probably comes closest to a legend within his country, Ozu, in terms of how he crafts social dramas in a way that makes the characters resonate with their surroundings and the cultural context that help offset the tragedy. It's the weight and the intrigue of his plots and characters that really sets him apart. With a wonderful score, one of the last by the late great Ryuichi Sakamoto, and with a grounded cast with a lot of life and perspective that helps their positions make sense, we get a gripping, resonant, and cathartic story, one of the best final acts I've seen all year. Me putting this right after one of the last movies Sakamoto scored, that wasn't really my intent, I swear. It's a happy accident, you can call it. Now, this is basically a concert film, which usually do nothing for me. Outside of some cuts and bits at the end, it's basically just a guy playing piano, unless you know the context. That being that this is Sakamoto's final performance. He was dying while he was performing it. He passed away shortly after. And he does it like an old pro. Nothing I've seen all year has moved me and gut punched me in quite the same way. We lost a true master and cannot begin to compartmentalize how much. One last encore before he sees us out really does help.
Nicht. Nicht, was machen wir denn jetzt? Können auch morgen oben was essen gehen?
This documentary looks at 2 women who struggle to conceive and have their journey followed by a close friend of theirs. This is such a beautiful film about love and perseverance that shows a massive reality in what some people in the world go through to become parents. Because did I mention that this one covers roughly a period of over 10 years? That's kind of important. You absolutely feel the burden and maddening annoyance of being in this limbo for so long, where they want to start a new chapter in their lives, but are constantly being roadblocked. With some fun animations, this movie isn't a complete drag to sit through. There's some fun, lighthearted stuff here that helps humanize everything. We see a life fully formed, one that's also made up of the shit parts. Just seminal, introspective documentary making.
Sure.
It's Pam.
Pam.
You're supposed to say nice to meet you, Pam.
Yeah. I'm sorry. It is nice to meet you, Pam.
It's nice to meet you too, Kevin.
Here's another extremely emotional one that's looking at the Von Erichs family. It examines the cost of fame and success being used more as an exploitative and abusive tactic with significantly dire consequences. The great acting turn for Zac Efron, but it's Holt McCallany who plays the patriarch Von Erichs that truly steals this show. Don't think I've hated a man on screen more all year. It's hard to know how accurate this film is about its depiction of wrestling because I know fuck all about wrestling, or even the story it tells. Rather infamously, it cuts out one of the brothers. If this turns you off the movie, I completely get it, but it's the telling of corrosive parents and toxic masculine showboating that really gives it its honesty. It leads to a heart-wrenching ending that stuck with me all year.
Set up a cinema in the old abandoned embassy from before times. It was like joining a club.
People would talk more and more about the Scala. You should go to the Scala.
Okay, this one was just abbreviated as Scala, exclamation point, exclamation point, exclamation point. But I felt that I wanted to use the full title because I love movie titles that look like Fall Out Boy song titles. So I think all film lovers just love a grimy, off the beaten track cinema. Just underground and full of filth and scandal. Not so good flicks. This one explores the entire monoculture surrounding Scala. It wasn't just a beloved cinema for those who felt the mainstream stuff wasn't doing it for them, but also a way for alternative people to connect and collate and even go on to create great, weird art themselves. Film has an ability to connect the outsiders, the queer, the neurodivergent, that one dude who's way too into Kenneth Anger movies. It was a way to be seen and find community before the internet fundamentally changed what that meant. There's a certain tragedy in how Scala went due to the importance for these people and their groups it had, but it was a wild ride to get it. I don't tend to go for talking head docs, but this was the right story that was told in the right meter for me. And I mean, you can't go wrong when John Waters shows up.
Yes. All of them? Yes. Tell me, why is an accomplished foreign architect shoveling coal here in Philadelphia?
Fucking hell, this was an entire experience. This 3.5 hour epic tells the story of an architect manipulated into what he feels will be escape and fortune by developing a community center for an eccentric millionaire. He's a Jewish man who escapes the Holocaust, so it paints these interactions into much more conscionable light. He's escaped debt, but has he escaped exploitation and marginalization in the United States? I never felt the link to this one, though they do have an intermission built into it, so that's really nice. It just dazzled me throughout with such perfect filmmaking. Every composition and shot choice hit. There was a grimy and ethereal atmosphere where it felt truly lived in. And this is all led by what is probably the best score I have heard all year. Compliments to Daniel Bloomberg. This one has a lot of buzz behind it, so don't be put off by the runtime. It's worth that commitment. It's been a great year for Southeast Asian based action films that are very heavily reminiscent of John Wick, hasn't it been? This one feels way more deliberate in its inspirations, but not only does it go up a notch by kicking an intense amount of ass, but it's politically conscious in a way that I don't see in a lot of these type of movies. Dev Patel dives into India's social class system and gender politics with confident aplomb, given that this is his first feature film. It's not just a political intrigue, however, that's the garnish. The real meat is in the action. Fuck, does it deliver? It is one of the most exciting and intense chase sequences I've seen in a long time. And it just keeps ratcheting up till we get to the show-stopping climax. It's high octane, beautifully stylized fun with a lot on its head and a dazzling, engaging central performance. Hope Dev keeps going to greater and greater heights. I love films that have complex interpersonal relationships with more than two characters, and I love ones where the flow of the plot is more based on the characters' vibes. So it's being pushed more by their change of mood, emotional reaction, and personalities rather than direct action. And this has both. Probably three of my favorite characters of the year, and the first half of it mostly being a night out where they just chill and hang out. It really gripping and enamored me to this movie's quiet, rhythmic confidence and almost dreamy atmosphere. I always felt gypped when things actually started to, happen. But the second half is also really good. All this movie is great. This one's a slow burn, but it really envelops into modern day social isolation, especially after COVID, and willingness for a connection leading us down complex life paths. Also, what we give up because of life beating us down, even if it's just fixing our deteriorating mental health. Just a quiet and fascinating movie with so much to say, and it made me an instant fan of Anthony Chen.
鳥肌かえで
そうだここもそこも
This is from Yusuke Hamaguchi, who made Drive My Car, a film I absolutely love. Despite the title, it deals with a true evil that has been enacted upon humanity, glamping. I'm honestly impressed with the character work that went into this, especially from the two sent from the glamping company to examine the site. They're not evil or malicious, they're just grunt workers, very sympathetic to the community who this new installment could irreparably hurt. I just love the way this guy has his characters talk. They feel like fully realized people with discomforts and perspectives they bring into the narrative. And even when it's just two people in a car, driving, one could say. It's gripping and entertaining stuff. It's a treatise on the nature of modernity and how it affects the delicate balance of things. But it's done in a way that involves a town that could be hurt by said balance disruption, and this makes everything a lot more nuanced and fascinating as it slowly plays out. Another banger from a phenomenal filmmaker. Probably one of the best endings of a movie I've seen all year. And this is where I would put Robot Dreams. Told you this Dragons would be up high.
Louis Stalin's swinging outraged Radio Moscow, which blasted Armstrong's visit as a diversionary tactic.
This documentary looks at the murder of Congolese leader Patrice Lumumba and the various complex ways that the UN and CIA has involvement in it. If you're not ready to be pissed off by imperialist forces, it's probably in your best interest to skip this one. But holy fuck, is it a fascinating and ever evolving look into global politics and the interpersonal ways in which they function, even in the mid 20th century, and how they kill. Coupled with this is various jazz artists that are being brought over to Africa in the guise of goodwill ambassador missions, unaware that they're being used as a front for the CIA. No voiceover or talking heads. We get a lot of quotes and a lot of sources for you to do your homework if you so wish. I appreciate the effort in appearing academically legit. It's just a lot of interesting history that ripples in how the world works now. And I don't need to tell you, it doesn't paint a pretty picture. But man, will you be enraptured by the rage. Honestly, another one that took me a while to get a handle of, but once it clicked with me, damn did it fall into place. It just affected me in a way that no other film this year has been able to. A dizzying, hilarious, and kind of frightening examination of disability, privilege, and how culture reacts to all of this. It shows a man who went through a massive surgery to remove his facial deformities, only to see someone with the same deformities get everything he's ever wanted, even the woman he loved. Sebastian Stan is really good here. It's a pretty fantastic year for him overall between this and The Apprentice. However, it's Adam Pearson that truly steals the show. And him arriving is what bolstered this movie up in my estimation, and probably my favorite performance of 2024. He just oozes grace and charisma, and you can easily see why people are drawn to him and the spiral he creates in our lead. It really questions the assumptions of how privileged and how disabled people are treated, and leaves no real or easy answers. And I love her for being such a mindfuck. An anti-body horror film, as my friend put it, and I could not ask for more.
Hai detto che la statua è inestimabile. E la testa quanto la stimi?
Alex Rohrwacher is a filmmaker who manages to capture the rustic charms of Italy while keeping the cynical sensibility. This film is more of a period story, which captures the more charming communal atmosphere of the old country, focusing on a man who was released from prison trying to look for his former lover. Then you find out him and his friends are grave robbers. King Shift. This one is fun, extremely well shot, with a bunch of lovable roguish characters, really trampling on a disproportionate class divides, and a frustrating rush it can put you in. Leading this charge is Josh O'Connor, who keeps making awful, idiotic decisions, but he's so freaking likable that you want him to cop on and succeed. Love this one a lot. Definitely one on my list I could catch rewatching if I want to put a smile on my face. Speaking of Josh O'Connor.
Are you seeing anybody? What do you mean? I'm taken. What do you think I'm doing here? You're not here to visit me.
Luca Guadagnino has had a really good year with the fascinating Burroughs adaptation of Queer, which missed my best list, and of course this one. Challengers is definitely more commercially viable of the two movies, and I guess I've sold out because sincerely, this is one of the only love triangles I've ever given a shit about, and it really puts it up a notch. Has Zendaya ever been better than she has been here? I'm going to say confidently Zendaya has never been better than she has been here, which is a high bar because Girl is fucking magnetic. But I mean, none of the three leads stand out. They're all equally engaging in their own right. It's really held up by some fascinating presentation. There's some clever use of sound design I could not stop thinking about. You know what it is if you've seen the movie. What can I say? It's just really fucking good tennis. A great back and forth with a climax more electric and adrenaline pumping than most action films I've ever seen. And this is where Perfect Days would be if I counted it.
Thank you so much, everybody. I'll see you next week. And in the meantime, take care of yourself.
Coralie Forget's body horror hedgefuck takes the simple theme of body dysmorphia and transforms it into this complex web of fame, influence, and self-loathing. And that is just how I like my fiction. Demi Moore gives probably my favorite performance of the year. It is between her and Pearson. And it's not just how she sells the gonzo shit the script throws at her. One of my favorite scenes of 2024 is the date scene. You'll know when you see it. It's just immaculately human. But that's not all the film has to offer. Of course, you're here for some crazy body horror shit, and it's here in droves. It really goes behind the veneer, the bright, shiny sheen a lot of this film has to give you something grotesque, baffling, and unforgettable. Just wonderful filmmaking, and a movie that will be talked about for absolutely years to come. May turn you off shrimp, though.
Hey, morons!
Mary and Max is in my top 5 favorite films of all time. It's also one of my top 4 on Letterboxd. So seeing that Adam Elliott had made a new movie after 16 years could not have made me more excited. I went in expecting to like it, but not really thinking it would be as good as his debut feature. Maybe too early to call this, but I was probably wrong, not only in it being as good as Mary and Max, it might even be better. Also, watch his shorts, they're also great. I love that this man has such a distinct style and even storytelling structure with repeating themes, yet all his films feel like a new experience. There's a bunch of great gags, amazing character work. Seriously, he can make you fall in love with someone who appears for like 20 seconds. Who can do that? It's a moving story about perseverance, the self doubt the world can instill into us, and how those who are perpetually abused find ways to cope and find meaning in the mess. It's uplifting, it's inspiring, it's wonderful. And it's still not my favorite film of 2024. So, just to give you a small clue as to what my favorite film might be. Hey, poster. I am not holding this right because I'm just holding the camera with my hands. Movie magic, baby.
And then, after I don't know how long, I felt myself start to leave myself.
Really was a toss up between this one and Memoir of a Snail for my favorite. This one just hit me where it counted. Jane Shubin told a viciously personal story, really motivated by her experiences of being a non binary trans person. It's about the importance of media to your identity and the liberation it can give you, the community it can build, and how it will lead you to better things. And how it maybe won't. There's a cameo here that nearly made me cry because it just hit me in that place. Despite people taking a maybe bleak or nihilistic view of this, it's ultimately a story about hope and what wonders you can find in the world if you have the courage to let them. I adore this. The characters, the production design, the music, the way they implemented the show itself. It's perfect filmmaking from a fascinating, powerfully voiced filmmaker. One I hope will continue to get their due, and one I'm happy got to make my favorite film of 2024. More for them than for me, but also me. Maybe you too.